G'day, welcome back to AGS 405, Consultancy for Farming Systems. We've already seen this list of a basic approach to consultancy, and we're just going to spend a few minutes together just expanding out different aspects of that list. So the order was initial contact, information collection, analysis, recommendations, and follow up. So on the initial contact, and I just want to, phrase this, what we're looking at here, it's really in regards to the spectrum of consultation. It's at that real farm business sort of end, or it's really looking to address a specific problem. It's probably not as much at the sales agronomist sort of end of that spectrum. But anyway, the initial contact, the preliminary gathering of information, the client's perceived issue, and their broader context. Really important to identify this perceived issue. A client will think they know what's wrong. That means that you should have an automatic solution to it. But sometimes the perception of the problem is not the reality of the problem. But your first initial contact, it's just getting some of that information together. And the information is presented in terms used by the client. So the client is trying to articulate what they think they need, what they think the problem is. And so in that first meeting, in that first contact, which may well just happen on the phone, you're trying to gather this initial information. It's a chance to better understand your client's principles, values, and objectives. And as we've already spoken about, we have the technical side of consultancy, but there is also this human side, and it's one of the real drivers. And later on in this subject, we will look at some of those aspects of decision making from the farmer and understanding what their drivers are. But really want to gather early on what are their principles, their values, their objectives. Assessing clients' experience and their capacity. So even if you are to make recommendations, are they going to be able to implement them? Do they have the capacity to do that? Okay, so there's a bunch of things, information that you can start to gather just from your initial contact. Now, if we were look, all right, at a sales approach, so we're thinking of that sales consultant more so, what are we thinking? That first initial contact, meet and greet. You are personable and professional. All right, and that's really key. When you shake their hand, do they leave with that feeling that this person knows what they're on about, or will they already have some doubts in their mind? And this will depend on individuals' characters as a consultant. So you want to be confident, you want to be friendly, you want them to have a sense that you know what you're doing, but you also don't want to become as being arrogant, strong-minded or strong-willed in the sense that you won't listen to them anyway. And so there's a real line to be walked along here in balancing the character you are, the way that you're perceived. And we're not always very good at understanding how we're perceived. It's useful for reflection to understand how are we perceived. It's the initial contacts, the opportunity to develop rapport. So people like people, not talking to machines. It's the opportunity to talk about a range of things, even just understanding their equipment. So my experience, particularly at the sales agronomist end of this spectrum, it was a good opportunity to talk about seeding equipment. What seeding equipment are they using? And a lot of growers are keen on their machinery and tractors and those kinds of things. And just being able to talk about whether it's press wheels or tines or disc or coulters, all sorts of things, you develop a rapport with them. And it's helpful, all right? The seeding equipment might not be the issue. It might not be the problem. You might not be worried about it, but it's doing a couple of things, all right? You're opening the conversation, and it allows you to talk about some things, and you start to develop that rapport, but also you're starting to establish that actually you might know something about their farm and their system, and you might be able to help them there. So doing some sort of a needs analysis, what do they feel like their issue is? And if you're working from the sales agronomist point of view here, is the contact initially a once-off approach about a particular paddock that they're struggling with and they're unsure about it and those kinds of things? Or are they coming to meet you, or you're having this conversation with the idea that maybe you'll be doing consultancy for the entire farm? And just so appreciating further what their needs are there going to be solutions? And now in a sales consultancy sort of role, there might always be solutions. That might be the what you're offering in that sense. But you need to be confident there'll be solutions to whatever problems they've sort of identified. But also they need to be confident in you that you can provide solutions for them. So that's kind of that initial contact. Can't, in many respects, overemphasize the importance of the personality here, being personable. Does that person, your potential client, walk away with a feeling of confidence in you, of friendliness, as opposed to being whether arrogant or unsure or... All right, and it's an area that we'd all need to work on and develop over time, is our ability to engage a wide range of people, to instill in them a sense of confidence in you and instill in them that you're actually interested in them. And so that's a really key factor. So if we go to step number 2, further information, really important that you don't just rely on the client's perspective for the problem. All right, you need to get on site and you need to be questioning. And so it's not unusual that the client has perceived a problem in a particular way, and partly because they're just simply ingrained in the system that they have. But a fresh set of eyes could reveal that the actual problem is different. Okay, so you need to get on site, you need to be questioning, you really want to define what that issue is. So this is really particularly for a consultant who's come on farm and there is this particular issue that they want. Analytical sampling, all right, so maybe within the agronomy point of view, you are taking soil tests, plant tissue tests, blood tests if that was to be a livestock issue, all sorts of things. You're looking for further information, all right? What's going to help us here come and resolve the situation? And you'll probably want to do some further research. All right, it's likely, particularly if it's a difficult problem, that you won't have all the answers in the top of your head. So the opportunity here is to do a literature review, and that could be some of what we might describe as the grey literature that's published by extension agencies, and or even some of their, I'm thinking of GRDC, grower events and those kinds of things. That could be really helpful, but it also could be helpful to go to the peer-reviewed literature to help support or for you to really unpack what those problems might be and maybe what the solutions might be. You also have options to speak to other experts. And here's a really important part about network and relationships is those experts might be other consultants, or they might be researchers at universities or state departments. But you need to build that network that it's easy to reach out when you're unsure about what's happening. Then we can have the analysis, all right? Must develop your work and it must be defensible. So here we're starting to think about what is the solution here? Now we're taking a very broad brush approach to this. This is probably not in reference to whether or not I should apply a herbicide on a particular paddock, but maybe it's the business aspect, okay, that you have worked through. And as you've analysed their business, you can see some limitations or opportunities, and you're going to suggest that they take a different tact, or that they invest here or don't invest here or cut their costs here. You need to make sure your work is defensible. So Also, understand how the issues your client is facing are often analysed. Is it done in a similar way? So in terms of a financial or business analysis, there are certain techniques that are used to be able to determine those things. Or do you need to develop a novel solution to those things? And really, are there any pitfalls? With a lot of problems, people have been there before, they've been there and they have done it. And so care must be taken that you're not necessarily just reinventing things. There's a chance that someone's done it before and they've found those problems. You don't want to be the one that walks into the pit the second time through. So we can have qualitative analysis, identify and organising some of the key information. You could even use a system sort of modelling approach here, just linking all these different factors that occur on farm, whether it's using something like a mind map or those kinds of things, really trying to identify all those connections that are happening on farm. So that's qualitative analysis, but there's always quantitative analysis. You could model the scenario. So this could be for a whole range of things. It could be, once again, on the business aspect in relation to the budget or finance. It could be using programs that are decision support tools, something like a GrassGrow or AppSim could help you to put actual numbers on the situation. And that will help you to be able to find a better outcome. So you can run different scenarios. What are you trying to do? It comes back to that first point here, that your work would be defensible. All right, you're building it up. Now, when you present this work, your client might not actually read all the material that's there, but you got to have it there, ready in the background to make sure that your outcomes or recommendations are solid. There can be the stress test as well. Double check the outcomes or double check the assumptions that are behind your work, but also the stress test. We've touched on risk a little bit and we'll come back to risk a little bit further on, but we really want to make sure, in terms of a business model, using average scenarios, your suggestions might work out. But what happens under a drought situation? Or what happens if fertilizer prices rise significantly? Really need to stress test those outcomes, that it's likely to be the best recommendation or solution in a wide range of different situations. And then you start to organise the key outcomes for reporting. What have I learned? What am I going to recommend to my client? So diagnosis and recommendations, there's preliminary progress report, and it's going to depend on the situation, the client, the urgency and the certainty that they need. So depending, has a wide range of scenarios, but often it might be simply just a progress report, just to show where you're up to, maybe some preliminary findings, but they're not set in stone yet. Understanding what the time frame is till the main report, and you do need to set expectations around this. It's difficult to write a large main report the night before your client was going to expect it to be due, and to get it all right. And so in terms of particularly a consultant, hopefully you have multiple projects all happening at the same time, and you really have to project manage them to make sure you can do all that work. So an analogy would be that every one of your subjects has an assessment due on exactly the same day. You can't do them all the night before. You need to plan. And so when you're talking to a client, you need to be pretty clear on setting the expectations. When can I actually get this back to you? Commonly, all right, lead with a question. And when you're having discussions, it's a really useful point. You don't always have to offer the answer, but you can deflect a conversation back into the question. Why are you thinking those things? Why do you think it's like this for? What do you think's going on? All right, and often those questions can reveal a deeper issue going on. In terms of reports, professionalism, branding, readability. Typos are terrible, all right? It might seem a simple little error that's in a document, but if someone is paying you thousands of dollars to present that document and they find a typo on the first page, the quality of the recommendations has already decreased in their mind. All right, it's as simple as that. Typos just demonstrate unprofessionalism and your recommendations have already lost quality. Make sure your report's branded. Remember, you're running a business and it needs to be readable. All right, it is likely, as I said, that the client won't read the entire report. So it needs to be clear, straightforward, understand where the recommendations are, and put really simply how you got there. You got to pitch it with your client in mind. Okay, don't just assume they won't be. It's unlikely that your client is PhD educated, used to reading scientific reports and those kinds of things. You have to pitch it with your client in mind, using your writing skills, where you've written simply and concisely, but formally. So I'm not suggesting that you write in an informal manner, but that it is clear and concise. And how long should that report be? That's really up to you. But you just need to appreciate that, all right, if it's really long, it won't be read. But you need to be able to demonstrate how your analysis has got there. And finally, we're at the follow-up. 5% of the work, doesn't take much work to follow up, but 25% of the outcome. That's kind of a simple rule of thumb. Clients love follow-up. We're all people. What does follow-up mean? It means to them that you actually care about the consultation that you've actually done. You care about them more than just a business, and it's more than just an invoice that you've sent, but they're actually a person and you've shown an interest in that. And you can't overemphasize enough. Just following up, seeing how they've gone, what worked, what didn't work. Are there next steps for them to follow? All right, it really strengthens that relationship that might lead to further work in the future. But it also means that your recommendations might be followed as well a bit more closely. Because like all of us, we might receive some recommendation and their life gets in the way. They don't look to implement them all. But if you're following up, it will strengthen their resolve to implement those recommendations. Importantly, all right, self-assessment or reflection. How did you go on the job? What went well? What didn't? Did the client get it? Did they understand what we were trying to do? Did they implement it? A simple thing. How was I received? All right, as I said earlier, our perception of ourselves individually, I don't think we do very well. We might think we're coming across friendly, but maybe it's over the top and it's arrogant. We might think that we're being patient and reserved, but the client might perceive as being timid and unsure about what we're talking about. And so thinking about, reflecting on how we're received is really important to develop those further relationships. All right, so there we go. There's a quick turnaround about some of those simple steps on the consultation or consultancy that you're likely to do when you get employed by a client to undertake some jobs for them. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'll catch you later. Bye.